Hey Summoners, how's the new season going so far? My name is Nathan Ng and I'll be your host for the patch 12.6 rundown. Today we're going to be covering the changes and also provide you guys with the updated tier list for all 5 roles to give you an idea of what's good and what's not too strong in each role this patch. Make sure to subscribe because we make meta videos like this just to make sure that you're always up to date on what's good, and you definitely don't want to miss out. Without further ado, let's begin the patch rundown. Before we get into the actual balance changes, let's look at one thing that everybody can agree that Riot does well: the skins. First, Pyke is getting an absolutely epic skin. When I first saw the splash art for the Ashen Knight Pyke, my first thought was that it looked like something straight out of the Diablo franchise, which honestly is probably one of my favorite game series of all time. I don't even play Pyke, and I'm 100% gonna be buying the skin just to put it in my profile background. Do know that this skin will cost a new mythic essence currency, so you better have some gemstones saved up for this conversion. Aside from the skin, we're also getting a new anima skin line. I will not be getting these, but hey, to each their own. Taking a cute anime-esque girl or guy and throwing on some cat, dog, or bunny ears is a pretty popular thing on the internet. So naturally, having a line themed around them is kind of a no-brainer. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that it took Riot so long to cash in on what's probably going to be one of their highest selling lines of all time. The skins we'll be getting are as follows: Battle Cat Jinx, which also features a Prestige Edition, Battle Bat Vayne, Battle Bunny Misfortune, which is the legendary skin of the set, Battle Wolf Silas, and lastly Battle Bunny Prime Riven. These skins look alright, and I think Riot could have actually gone away with Highway Robbery by making each of these legendary, and people would have still bought them. Now for the system changes. This patch, Riot's goal is a pretty big blanket nerf to how much healing there is in the systems. Fleet Footwork is seeing its bonus AD go down from 40 to 30%, while the AP ratio is going down from 30 to 20%. Legend Bloodline is losing 1/3 of its healing, going from 0.6% per stack up to a maximum of 9% lifesteal, down to 0.4% per stack up to a maximum of 6% lifesteal. To compensate a bit, once you get the maximum legend stacks, you gain 100 max health, which is cool, I guess. Vampiric Scepter and Blade of the Rune King are both having their lifesteal lowered from 10 to 8%. Immortal Shield Bow is also seeing its 10% become 8, but it's getting some slight compensation buffs. Now, the shield scales up to 700, 50 more than the previous 650 at level 18. The Mythic passive is also getting a slight buff, going from 5 AD and 50 health up to 5 AD and 70 health. Blood Ward, the Ornn Forged version of Immortal Shield Bow, is also losing 2% lifesteal, going down from 12 to 10%. While not on Riot's change list on Twitter, Bloodthirster in PvE is also being nerfed, with its lifesteal going from 20% down to 15%. To compensate, it's getting a slight buff to its AD, and that's going up from 55 to 60. And lastly, Riot has finally decided to remove Ravenous Hunter from the game. It's being replaced by Treasure Hunter. This new rune stacks up like any of the other Hunter runes, but instead of giving you a stacking stat, it just grants gold for each stack. You get 70 gold for your first one, and then an additional 20 gold for each stack, up to a maximum of 150 gold. I think this is a really cool rune idea, and it's definitely going to be something to run on champions where you want to snowball hard. Cashing in on all 5 stacks means an extra 550 gold. Since getting said stacks means interacting with the entire enemy team, it's definitely a rune meant for junglers or heavy roamers like Talon, Quinn, and Kiana. Alrighty, that covers the system changes, so let's talk about how those changes, as well as the balance changes for the champions themselves, will affect our tier list. First, let's start off with the top laners. We'll start things by moving Kayle up to the OP tier. Kayle performs well in almost every single matchup, with her absolute worst being Tryndamere, and even then her win rate is a little bit above 49%. A champion that scales as hard as Kayle should definitely be a little bit more of a high risk, high reward type of pick, but obviously, she's very consistently scaling and carrying games. Urgot is another champion that's performing well enough to deserve a promotion, so he lands in the S tier this time around. His only single weakness is teamfighting against a super range heavy enemy team that can kite him to death. But against melee heavy teams, Urgot truly lives up to the Juggernaut fantasy, pumping out massive damage while also seemingly being unkillable. Originally, we put Soraka in the S tier due to how well she can win most lanes and then provide a lot in teamfights. But the one thing about her is that she needs a certain team comp to be a viable pick. Specifically, she needs a good frontliner that can actually hold back the enemy team so she can actually get out her heals. Since the top lane is usually one of the main roles that picks a frontliner, you're relying on a jungler or support to play that instead. TLDR, she's really good in some comps, but too situational to not be in the B tier. Yona gets put all the way down to the B tier. He's getting hit pretty hard this patch, since he builds both Immortal Shield Bow and Bloodthirster, meaning that he's losing 7% lifesteal out of his full build. Being in the B tier means that he's a situational pick, but honestly, even in times where he is a good pick, there's probably some other bruiser that could just do it better. But even though he's in the B tier doesn't mean he's annoying to go against. I won't take that away from you guys. Yasuo is going to be even worse off than his brother, so he ends up in the C tier. He's going to be hit pretty badly by those shield bow and BT nerfs as well, but he's also objectively a bad top laner. His kit just isn't well suited to dealing with any of the bruisers, juggernauts, or tanks that you deal with up here. So with the bad laning phase and weaker scaling now, he's definitely one of the worst champs in the role. Look, I'm just gonna say it, Graves top is overhyped garbage. He is like a slightly less bad version of Lucian. He bullies lane hard early, but inevitably, you just overextend and then die, then becomes completely useless for the rest of the game. Even when he does have a lead, he's just a clunky split-pushing marksman. People love to pick him because they see high elo players do it, but high elo players actually have the wave management and macro to make him work. And even then, there are probably 20 other top lane picks that they should be using instead. But you know, if you're having fun with him, then by all means, go for it. To be in line with the rest of our list, we have added a D tier for the especially awful champions. For now, Lucian, Ryze, Gwen, and Olaf are the ones that belong here. Those champs should never be touched, ever. Now for the jungle, here's our list. Evelynn was somehow forgotten from our tier list previously, and thank you guys so much for letting us know in the comments. Not to make excuses for ourselves, but she's just really rare and kind of meh when she was picked. So we're adding her, but she lands in the B tier. Graves gets demoted to the B tier, and it almost feels like he should be in the C tier. The problem with him as a pick is that he just doesn't have much proactivity to him. Most people that pick Graves just AFK farm, tax waves, and hope they pick up free kills. It's basically just praying the enemy jungler lets you have your way. Taliyah drops down to the B tier. Too many junglers in the current meta just kind of run over her. She's good in lower threat enemy comps, but that's about it. Nidalee is just too hard of a champion for the average player to play, and since we've separated our high elo tier list from this one, we can safely move her down to the C tier here. If you aren't Masters Plus, you probably don't have the flawless mechanics that you need to make her work. Even if you actually somehow do have those mechanics, Nidalee can only really be played in a super aggressive fashion. If your team can't match that, there's a good chance you'll be limited on what you can actually do with her, so she just ends up falling off and becoming useless. Karthus used to be such a powerhouse in the jungle, and now he just lacks any type of viability. He gets beaten by every single meta pick, and his hard scaling just doesn't make up for it, especially because he never even make it there. If you need magic damage in the jungle, Fiddlesticks and Diana are infinitely better picks. Gwen also gets demoted to the D tier. Outside of high elo, she was kind of a meh pick before the nerfs. Now that she received those changes, she's just absolutely awful. Now here's our mid lane tier list. Pantheon gets lowered from the OP tier down to the S tier. He's still really good, but honestly, we just felt like the OP tier was a little bit overcrowded and wanted to move one of our picks down. Zed dropped down to the A tier. The thing about Zed is that if it's not a super squishy meta, he can never really full on 1v9 games. He can carry pretty well by making picks when the game is close, but if the enemy team is winning on all fronts, he just can't backpack the whole team. Cog moves up to the B tier since he's a decently strong pick in the right situations. Specifically, he's good when the team has very low amounts of dive, so he can go ahead and sit back and free fire with his ultimate with no repercussions. But when you end up against heavy diving champions like Hecarim or some assassin, he's pretty awful, so only pick him when you see the full enemy team. Corki has been struggling pretty badly since the nerfs he got to his package, so we've dropped him down to the C tier. There's rarely a time when he's even a viable pick, and when you could pull him off, there's just so many other better options. While he isn't a super popular pick in the mid lane, there are those weirdos that like to play Ezreal mid. I'm talking about my friends as well. And let me say this, if this is you, you need to stop. There's a pretty solid argument that Ezreal mid is the worst possible pick in the game, if you aren't including Yuumi jungle as competition. Another absolutely D tier pick is Kaiser in the mid lane. If you think it's viable because you saw some pros doing it, just remember that solo queue is nothing like coordinated pro games. All that ends up happening when you pick Kaiser mid in solo queue is that you give your opponents a free lane, so they're able to roam and win the rest of the map. The thing that's different about pro play and solo queue is that pro play is so slow, and it gives a lot of champions time to scale. And speaking of scaling, she does have that decent scaling, but it's not nearly enough to make up for her complete lack of presence in the first 15 to 20 minutes of the game. Now let's move things down to the bot lane. Seraphine gets bumped up to the OP tier. Usually the OP tier denotes a champion that has super 1v9 potential, but obviously Seraphine doesn't fall into that exact category, since she's an enchanter. But still, her impact is so strong in fights that we feel that she belongs here. The thing that makes Seraphine so good is that she's an insanely hard scaling champion that also has a really easy time making it through the laning phase. Basically, you're guaranteed to freely scale up to team fights where you provide so much more than any other champion. Another champion that gets promoted to the OP tier this patch is Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger is one of the most impressive laners in the game, so there's pretty much no such thing as a losing lane matchup. But he isn't just some lane bully that falls off hard and can't carry later. He's a god tier team fighter as well. His different ults allow you to fight in different situations, and since he's a mage, you can easily itemize into Zhonya's to counter divers. You aren't left praying for a competent support to keep you safe. You can do it all yourself. Tristana moves down to the A tier. She's a very solid pick still, but she's just not performing as well as you'd expect from an S tier champion. However, it is worth saying that if you play her when duoing with your support, she could be considered S tier. That extra coordination means that you're much more consistently able to snowball lanes and carry a lot harder. Kate gets bumped down to the C tier because even in her very best circumstances, there are just better picks. Best case scenario, you win lane with her pretty hard, but she just falls off so much harder than before due to the nerfs that she got a few patches ago. She just isn't able to convert an early lead into much. In line with what we did in the jungle, we added a D tier for our ADCs to distinguish the absolute worst picks in the role. For now, the 2 picks that make the cut are unfortunately Aphelios and Varus. To finish things off, we have our supports. Nautilus gets moved up to the S tier. He's been doing well enough that we're pretty confident in saying that he's the best tank support in the game at the moment. He provides tons of disruption and catch potential, so works well with and against a variety of comps. Maokai trades place with Nautilus, moving down to the A tier. He's a pretty well-rounded support with good peel and disruption, and a unique boost to his vision and zone control that he gets from his saplings. He's really close to keeping a spot in the S tier, but with the meta being so heavily favored towards enchanters, we only think one tank belongs at that level. Lastly, we have Seraphine being moved down to the B tier. The buffs that Riot pushed out really didn't do much to help Seraphine's support. More than anything, they just made Seraphine as a bot lane carry even stronger, while support remained exactly the same. Part of that reason is because Seraphine needs a lot of expensive items to reach that point, and as a support, that's just not gonna cut it. Alright, that concludes our patch 12.6 rundown. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, I apologize if my voice is all over the place. My throat is killing me. Hopefully it's not that thing that's going around. Anyway, I love you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.